HIV virus, we have about 33 million cases in the world today. 2 million people die per year. 2.5 million people new cases we get every year. I mean, from this 33 million, about 70% are in Africa, but still the number is huge. So we want to talk a little bit about HIV, how the mechanism, what it has and what it does and how it works. Okay, regularly speaking, like in our body, we have DNA. The DNA goes into RNA transcription, and translation happens that we make proteins. However, HIV, it does not have DNA, it has RNA. So what it does, it uses an enzyme called reverse transcriptase. It goes from DNA to RNA. I mean, it goes from RNA to DNA. It reverses the process that we do in our body. And that's why it's called a retrovirus. And then after HIV makes its own DNA from its RNA, that DNA, it's used in our body to make messenger RNA, and then it makes protein. So it uses our membrane. Like the HIV does not have a cell membrane, so what it does is going to come and attach to some receptors in our cell, and then make its own membrane. And after it makes its own membrane, it uses our machinery to make its own messenger RNA, and then proteins, and then it replicates and so on. And HIV virus like to infect a specific receptors in the cell. Okay, and these are called I'm gonna use a different color. Probably red is a good color, or purple. These are called CD4+. So if we did not have CD4+, this HIV cannot bind to anything and it will not work. So, but because of the CD4+, the virus is able to infect our cells. And the most popular cell in our body that get infected by HIV, it's T helper cell. T helper cell. Okay, T helper cell is the most popular one, but we have other cells that get infected by HIV, and these cells are, we're gonna just, let's pretend this, let's say this is number 1, number 2, it's gonna be monocytes, number 3 it's macrophages, number 4 it's microglia. Well, we know microglia. It's more of like our immune system in the brain. So microglia, you're just gonna find it in mostly like in our brain. Okay, monocytes, macrophages everywhere. And then T helper cells is the boss that tells everybody else what to do. Also, another place that HIV can attack will be Langerhans cells. Langerhans cells, and these cells are normally under the skin, like kind of around. The way I like to remember, longer hands. I like to see longer hands. Imagine this is a hand, a long hand, and this is the skin. So the dermis and all that, you remember that Langerhans, it's around that area, the skin parts, and that's where the HIV can actually attack as well. But most of the time we hear T helper cells, but it's good to know that HIV also it can attack monocytes, macrophages, and microglia, Langerhans cells. Last but not least, it can also attack follicular these are, okay, I went too fast. Go back here. These are dendritic cells. So follicular dendritic cells, also another thing that HIV can attack. Last but not least, I want to talk about the receptors. What kind of receptors they use in order to do what they do. Okay. The receptors they like to use is, we know HIV, they have a system. If this was an HIV right here, it's gonna have a little tiny thing, then it's gonna have a little bigger thing like that. This is almost like a magnet right here. Okay, this magnet system is called 41 GP plus 120 GP. GP for glycoproteins. So what this HIV is going to have the 41 glycoprotein and 120 glycoprotein, and what it's going to do is going to attach to our cells. They have, what we have is glycoprotein 160. Okay, so 120 plus 140 is 161, but I mean you can remember 160 is close to it. So that's what we have. Okay, and that's what the virus has. So they attach in the cell. They attach. And when they do that, they also, this is like a cells that has, obviously these cells, they have CD4. Okay? So if we think about it, like this is the virus, okay? And the virus has this little tiny system. This is this system right here. And then this system want to attach to our own 160, okay? Let's say this is our own 160 right here. This is our own 160. Okay, this is the 160 part, and this is the part where the virus is. This is the part where we are, and then the way it is going to attach to it. This is the cell. This is our human cell. Let's say this is our human cell. Is going to look for receptors. If this cell was, let's say this was a macrophage cell. If this was a macrophage cell, macrophage, they have a specific receptors. They're called CCR5. Receptor 5. R for receptor, receptor 5. CC stand for I think is chemokine. Okay, I think they're it means chemokine. Chemokine. Okay, chemokine receptor 5, receptor type 5. It's right on the macrophage. The virus is really sneaky. This system that the virus uses right here, it has almost like a hand, an extra hand right here. So this extra hand is going to come and attach to this CCR5. So it's like how the whole idea here is how to make the virus attach to our cells so they can start using it. First they got to attach to it. So in order to attach to it, they first use the 120/41 glycoprotein parts to attach to our 160 part. Okay, that's the first step. The second step, they use their hand to go and, I mean, they don't have a hand, but I mean that's how they grab our receptor. So they use their own extra hand to attach the receptor, so they can steal our membrane and get into the cell and do what they got to do. I mean, after they have their own, because the idea is if they have our membrane, they can use endocytosis to get into the cell, and then they're gonna be at advantage and play major control over our cells. Another cell that is the major cell that we always talk about is T helper cell, right? T helper cell always have that CD4. So it's going to do the same thing. It's going to come like that. It's going to use the same system, 41, 120, and then it's going to attach to our 160. But the thing is, what it's going to do is we have in T helper cells, they have what we call the CXCR4 receptor. So they have a receptor, a core receptor 4. So what they're going to do is they're going to attach to the core receptor 4. So now we have to memorize two receptors. The CCR5, which is a macrophage receptor. The T helper cell has the CXCR4. Okay? I like to remember these two this way, like HIV, IV. If you look at IV by itself, in Latin this means 4. But if you look at 5 by itself, I mean the V in Latin by itself means 5. So we know, I mean, something just to kind of like make you remember that even the word itself, HIV, give us the hint like there's a 4 and there's a 5 in it. So I remember the receptors that we have, the R5 for macrophages and the CR4 for T helper cells. Alright, thank you.